good to speak to you again. And you're here to talk about your brand new show, and you're not in court just because you're sitting like this. Queer Futures, am I right?
Future Queer is the name of
Future
the
Queer,
show.
halfway there. Tell me then what it's all about.
So, as the title implies, it explores an imagined queer future. But I guess I'm also looking at facts, looking at predictions about what might happen in the world, what might happen specifically for queer people. And also, it's a fantasy. So, I really kind of exaggerate and push a lot of the ideas. And I'm doing the show in November at the Town Hall Hotel, which is where I am now
Mhm,
rehearsing in
mhm.
the ex-council chamber. So this is where the show will be. You're right, it does look like I'm in court, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They're probably going to send me down for hard labor.
Tell me, we first met when you were doing your big success. So how does this follow on now? This is totally different than
Yeah, so you mean Riot Act?
thank you.
Yeah. I actually met you for sex crime before that. I remember you interviewed me when I was rehearsing at the Glory and I was sat on the stair wall trying to get reception on the phone with a glitter curtain behind me.
We go
But
back a long time. So
yeah,
yeah, so you've gone from the Glory to the Town Hall.
yeah, and I'm still in the East End actually. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But you're right. This is in a way. Is it a response to Riot Act? Well, it's
I don't
Riot
know.
Act is about the past and the present time. That was the big
Mhm.
surprise with Riot Act that it
Yeah.
also was the current moment. But yeah, in a way, Future Queer is a response because it's looking at the future.
Hmm.
But similarly, I don't want to give too much away, but I
No,
also
no.
look at the past and the present in Future Queer and how it
Hmm.
all crosses over. Because we always think that the future is this thing that is so far out of reach, but lots of things that are happening now were also happening to us 50 years ago. And then
Yeah.
there are extraordinary changes as well. Um, I really use I Feel Loved on the Donna Summer track throughout the show. And
Hmm.
that's a kind of motif of queer survival and queer celebration.
Yeah.
But the track is nearly 50 years old. It's 46 years old. And that's extraordinary if you think about it. So I use that as this idea of things from the past that
Yeah.
we have in the present. And I think we'll be dancing to I Feel Love in another 46 years.
Yeah. I'm very keen on your play because I'm really impressed by how our future is being shaped by our past. And
Yeah,
sometimes, because it's you say 50 years, that's a relatively short time in history. Although those of us with long memories can still remember the time 50 years ago when we hated Donna Summer.
yeah. Well, this comes up sometimes when I talk about this track. And I've just done an interview with Loverboy where they asked me that specific question. And maybe when we have more time off the camera, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your actual thoughts. But I think that's such an interesting thing about Donna Summer. This uh, rumor that plagued her for years. Was it said? Was it not said? It's so
Yeah.
hard to find accounts from the actual night because it's a specific night people are
Yeah.
referring to about a night after a concert. I don't believe Donna Summer said anything untoward. I believe that she perhaps said something that was
Mm.
clumsy
Yeah.
at a time of mass hysteria. Um, I've spoken to people who were there at the very, very early days of the AIDS crisis. We're talking 78,
Yeah.
79, before it was even initially announced to the world. And they said really interesting things to me about how some prominent members of the gay community were actually trying to distance themselves from what it wasn't called AIDS at the time, because they were saying, no, no, this has nothing to do with gay men's lives, because
Yeah.
they were so terrified of that label. So it makes sense that somebody could say something and it's jumped on. So not only has I Feel Love survived for nearly 5 decades, the rumor, that urban myth, has survived for nearly 5 decades as well.
I don't think with Donna Summer in particular, but I remember being part of the movement when we were so angry. We
Mm,
needed something to take our anger against.
yes,
If we were dealing with AIDS or with our loved one with AIDS, we needed a force for our anger sometimes. And she was not an easy one. But I don't remember the years very well. But I remember going home being, we're allowed to like her again,
yeah.
and
Well,
feeling
it's
so
really
relieved.
yeah. I remember even seeing her perform live 25 years ago, approximately at GAY in London, and she did 3 songs, and that was like a big deal that she was doing this gig in a gay club. But she did lots of AIDS benefits before that. alleged remark and
Yeah.
after. There's a really interesting I think it's handwritten, a letter that she wrote to
Mm-hmm.
ACT UP. You can see online.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that whole thing, Roger, is that people just repeat it without doing the
Yeah.
research. Because
Yeah.
I've done the research and it's not an easy task. You are really having to piece things together.
Mm-hmm.
So people say to me, Donna Summer hated gay people. Donna Summer said AIDS is God's revenge. And I say, well,
Yeah.
give me a bit more context. What else do you know about it? And they can't say one thing.
So I wonder with you, this going back over history, is this a passion, a personal passion, or is it something you feel obliged to do for the generations that are now coming up?
I don't feel obliged to do that, but I am interested in culture over uh, the decades, especially
Mm-hmm.
queer culture, and looking at how that all fits together and looking at what a rich legacy we have around us of music, change makers, thinkers, art, films. And throughout Future Queer, I say at the beginning, this is a DIY queer lecture. It's
Mm-hmm.
a patchwork commentary, and you see me talking about the history of I Feel Love. I talk about the Village People. I reference
Yeah.
Oscar Wilde, like radical queer theory as well. What I really like doing, Roger, is throwing all of those things into the pot. So
Yeah.
sometimes mixing something that's quite pop with something that's a bit more academic, or going deep on something like I Feel Love or the
Mm-hmm.
lyrics of Go West by the Village People, and throwing a new
Our,
spin on.
our community is sadly very ageist. So when you work this piece and you make these references, do you get any blank looks?
No, but what was really interesting when I did the work in progress presentation of this show in the
Mm-hmm.
summer, loads of young people said to me, "Oh, I never knew that Go West had that meaning. That it was a celebration about going to this um, gay ideal to San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco." So they knew the song. Perhaps they knew the Pet Shop Boys cover version from the 90s, but they were still quite young. So people knew it, but they just didn't know the background. And lots of people of my age and even older probably don't know the background.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I, I, I just think it's so important that we do not just know our history, but we know about all of these
Yeah.
amazing cultural
Yeah.
figures in queer life. Like I researched them when I was young. I looked at the singers from the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. We all have so much at our fingertips now, but we're swamped with information, and sometimes it's hard to focus.
Do people come out feeling exhilarated or educated? What's the main feeling we get from this?
Yeah, people. It's a really entertaining show. It's very
Mm,
funny. It's very tongue in cheek, and then I do my typical thing of kind of hitting them with something really hard
mm,
hitting as
mm.
well. But people responded really well to the show in the summer, the trial run. People find it celebratory. They find it uplifting. They find it moving. They love the fact that it kind of veers between theatre, stand-up comedy. It's TED Talk. It's all
Yeah.
these different things. Honestly, Roger, it was a work in progress when I did it in the summer, and I finished writing it on the day of the show. I
Mm-hmm.
had absolutely no idea how it would go. Genuinely, I hadn't even done like a reading on Zoom for a handful of industry colleagues. I just went out there on my own, and I thought they're just going to stare at me for an hour and think I'm completely crazy. Maybe they did, but they also laughed. They also moved in
You
the
got
right.
you got good news. Now you've been known to take your work to Europe, I believe. That are you intending to expand this run award, and does it have the same context to an un-British audience?
That's a good question. You know what? I am kind of known for doing shows again and again over certain periods of time and bringing them back. And I don't think this will happen with Future Queer. I
Okay.
think that these two dates in November that I'm doing are possibly it. Um, I don't have any other plans to do the full version of the show. I'm doing a little something with it in January. So I feel like come and see it now. I think it's quite an American sense of humor in a way. You talk about how may it be taken internationally. It's very punchline heavy. I like the setup of a gag and the punchline, and the audiences seem to like that too.
Yeah, as you know, I'm based here in America, and I see a lot of drag. I'm a very bad journalist because I don't like the drag show people, but I'm interested in how things would work over here.
Mm.
And it goes both ways because I recently interviewed Alec Mappa, who was going to make his English debut over in London. And do you think there's a more there's a more crossover than there used to be in the old days?
Uh, I think that, like, for example, Riot Act and Future Queer have quite an American sensibility with the humor. I
Yeah.
guess I'm influenced by a lot of American comics. I think, I think possibly, I mean, there's always going to be differences, aren't there, between like kind of cultural
Yeah.
references. But I see a lot of American comedy that's also quite chilled, and it's not big, building it and
Yeah.
then hits them with it. Like lots of British comedy. Um, Even when I tour my show Riot Act throughout the UK, people
Mhm.
often say, "How is it received in the different cities?" And there, it is received differently, but it's not received differently in another way. So um, different audiences might listen in different ways.
Yeah, I
Might
think that's a major thing I like about you and people who do work. You go out to the cities. Now, you're not in America. You're not going to Chicago, New York. You're going to places that most other English will go, where?
I go wherever they want me. So
Yeah,
on a typical tour, I might be in a town that doesn't normally get queer work. I might then
yeah.
go to one of the main theatres in Birmingham or Manchester, and I go to all these different places, and it's so amazing. Well, for example, when I toured Riot Act, I had these great producers. They would put me in these different theatres, and it was just so nice to do it. I'm like a theatre nerd, so I like to go around
Good.
and see all these different cities and towns as well.
I
Audience.
was talking recently to Myra Dubois, who I adore. And what I adore about not just about her work, but the way she takes that work into places like where there must be the only queer in the village.
Yeah. And often people don't get to see work at that level, um, and they will come out for it, and they will
Yeah,
travel maybe from even further away.
yeah.
They'll drive for an hour and a half to get to that theatre to see that show, and I could be performing a show to 30 people or 150 or 300. It's like each night is different and unique and special. It sounds corny, but it's true.
No, what's even cornier is you may be in one of these obscure towns and you fall in love and stay there forever.
Well, that would be nice. I better get my producer to get me back out on the road.
Okay, so we're running 2 nights. I mean,
We are.
is there a future after that? Are you planning to record it and go on YouTube or?
No. I've got a couple of digital theatre pieces online, including
Okay.
one that is on Broadway in demand at the moment, and people are watching that. You have to be here to see this.
Okay.
The only way I want to film it is if I had a crew and it was done in a
Okay.
really high-end way. So you've got to be here November the 20th or the 21st, and I just say get it while you can, get it while
And
it's
if you
hot.
don't get it, we're going to put Alex's details, hound him down and make sure he comes to your town or follow him where he is next. It's always a joy to talk to you. I wish I was there, but I don't really. No, I wish I would. No. I mean, I'm not, I've only just come back to Ireland. I don't travel so much now, but I wish I'm seeing you behind, and Hackney was my stomping ground.
Oh, really?
Great to talk to you. We put this up in the next couple of days. I hope it helps you sell out, but you don't need my help anyway.
I do, Roger. And actually, this is really good questions, and it's really nice to have a chat and just to kind of
Okay.
bounce off each other. It gives a really nice angle to it.
Okay. And make sure I get one of the red seats.
I would put you in the throne here behind me, that big seat.
Oh,
It's so good, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good.